Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today. Today is a bit of a different day and time, as Brenda was just mentioning, but we're very glad to have you on board. We're going to do some really quick house cleaning stuff, and then we're going to get going with our guests who have a lot to share with us today, so we're very grateful for that. So again, this is Redesigned Network Dallas chapter, and obviously we have been reaching a much broader audience for the past several years due to the global pandemic. So welcome all of you who are joining us from Europe, Asia, Australia, and North America, and we have a great topic today to go through. So again, as always, we are being sponsored by Slalom and Precocity, who are helping us to actually get our technology platforms paid for, so we can actually bring you some great content for free. So thank you so much for our sponsors. As always, this is Survey Design Dallas, and of course, I'm Greg Lacloufie, and I'm actually Director of Strategy for Slalom, and we have Brandon Ward, who is the CXO for Precocity, and we have a bit of an update. He's not aware of that, but we're going to flex a little bit on our friend Christopher Robin, who is being promoted, I guess, or has the great privilege of becoming the first service design director of the great healthcare system in Texas, Baylor Scott & White. So congratulations for a well-deserved job. I'm sure you're going to do a great job over there. And Brenda, who is not with us today, but of course, always happy to have her with us. As always, this is being recorded. This is a live event that's recorded. So if you have missed the past 30 or so events, you can definitely go to our YouTube channel, Service Design Network Dallas chapter, and you can see the past 30 or so sessions we've had with the service design luminaries. And this particular session will be today or maybe tomorrow available for all of you to share with your friends and colleagues and anybody who would be interested into the topic we have today. As always, if you have some questions for our guests, go into the chat and make it obvious to us those questions are for them, and we will kind of like aggregate those and play it back to them at the end of their presentation. So I appreciate you not asking directly a question. I cannot see what they're presenting. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, large-scale service design. We have constantly being asked all the time, how large and complex can service design be? We've had many guests in the past who have discussed very large government scale projects. For example, the UK has had some very large success into government scale projects. But the question is always like, how big can service design go? Really, how much of complexity can we handle? A lot of us are doing some very small, I would say, and incremental projects that don't have a very, I want to say, planetary scale. Today, we're going to be talking about that with our guest. So, for example, we have a lot of like projects that are very micro in nature. We're trying to fix one touch point or several touch points in experience, whether being outward facing or internal for an employee experience, for example. And a lot of us have been doing this for a long time. And then one day you actually have a much larger project, and sometimes it is very uncomfortable. So today we're going to be addressing this with our guests and let you know that no, this is basically the same thing. It's just more of it, and we're going to kind of like go through what they have gone through, so you can take that experience for yourselves and kind of see how much bigger of your project can be, knowing that you can actually go something very large all the way to planetary level in this particular case. In today's case, we're going to be talking about Scandinavia's maritime shipping lanes, right? So we're going to be focusing on Finland, obviously, but like this, for example, is a snapshot of every single ship in Norway, Sweden, and Finland. You can see this is a snapshot. So every day there are hundreds of ships going in and out of Finland, for example. And that's a very complex problem to have. And obviously it's a perfect service design job to look at, because all that has to be orchestrated, it has to be designed, it has to be rethought. All those ships obviously have to connect to each other, connect to the authorities, and they have to meet compliance and governance. So it's a very complex problem. We're going to look at that very quickly as fast as we can. Just want to mention that this particular team we're going to talk about today have won the 2023 Service Design Network Global Award, which is a very prestigious award. And it was a really, really, really high level quality of potential winner. So definitely great job. There are multiple categories. This is actually a commercial award. So definitely pay attention, because this team is basically the winning of the global award. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Sana Vanyanpa and Jukka Lepisto. I'm going to give you a few minutes to introduce yourself and your team. Obviously, this was a large team. So in a few minutes, tell us who you are, what you do, and then we will give you the floor to tell us all about your project.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Yes, so good day or evening, members of the service design community at Dallas or all over the States or even in the globe, as we heard from your comments. We are very honored to present to you the Finnish Maritime Single Window, NEMO. So we come from Siili Solutions, which is an end-to-end IT consultancy house. It has experts from business and service designers all the way to developers and tech architects and data scientists. So like a very multidisciplinary team and experts we have at the house. And we have co-founded together with Jukka, Siili Maritime Business Unit, which is focusing on providing digital and data-enabled solutions for maritime industry specifically. But I'm also a designer and have been the lead designer for the NEMO concept.
Yeah. Hi, nice to meet you all. My name is Jukka Lepisto. I'm a director of the Maritime Business Unit, but also have a background in technology consultancy and technology architecture.
So basically what we are going to go through today is what the Maritime Single Window means, then our service design process, and the vision concept deliverables, and what type of impact it created. And then some key takeaways to take with. And then we will go through also a bit from our business perspective, from maritime business perspective. What does this mean for the whole business, and what type of competitive advantage we are able to capture through this type of design?
All right. So first of all, NEMO is a maritime single window, and this term or concept single window is actually from the United Nations, and it means that you have a platform that where you can submit or for single entry point for submitting standardized information. In Finland, 90% of foreign trade is carried by sea. It means that basically roughly 100 vessels arrive in Finnish ports every day, and up to 20 notifications or port calls are made for each port visit. And this ends up in 730 notifications in a year. And more than 20 stakeholders monitor and guide the operations of an individual vessel when they arrive to the port. Here you can see some of the examples of the data which is collected during the port visit: arrival time, information about the ship, cargo, crew, waste, hazardous materials, and maritime health, to mention a few of those. And in principle, each European Union member country collects the same port call data, but not quite. This is what the reality looks at the moment. So huge amount of time is spent communicating back and forth, submitting the information manually and checking it and double checking it. And at the moment, the processes are really complex and very slow. The current system the Finnish has is outdated and prone to errors. And it requires quite a lot of multiple data submissions. And the same data also needs to be modified between different countries. So hence we have the regulation, new regulation in place in EU level, European Maritime Single Window environment, through which the port call information is harmonized across the EU, and stating that the information needs to be, first of all, reused and then shared transparently between the different actors. The idea is that the single window shares the information nationally, but also with other member states through the central EU system. And the system we are building is called NEMO, and we are building it for the Finnish national level for a company called Fintraffic, which Sanna mentioned, which is a public company. We have created a vision concept to shape the future in 10 years. NEMO will be a national data platform for maritime traffic and logistics that utilizes the digitalization, automation, and standardization. It's also a public data platform and neutral, and it can be used for building various commercial services for added value. And our long-term vision is to increase the national productivity of Finland.
Yes, so next I will share you a little bit more detailedly how we have gone through our service design process. So here you can see our team. So the holistic approach of NEMO concept creation required different disciplines in the team. And as you can see, we have wide kind of range of expertise involved in the team. And in addition to the list we have here, we also had support from our other experts related to our visual branding and the guidelines we had to create for that, and also with the user experience and user interface design. And then, of course, additionally, a program manager and a project manager supported us from the client side, the Fintraffic that Jukka just mentioned. We conducted over 40 interviews and 5 observations within the Finnish maritime industry to better understand the current state and identify the challenges through our discovery phase. We talked with ports, with the shipping companies, operators, agents, and different authorities to understand better the landscape. And this created the groundwork for our co-creation phase and also gave the seed for the change management to start. We prepared our draft of the present state together with the stakeholders in a series of meetings. We had to convince also our client to invite both sides, the authorities and also the commercial companies, under the same roof. And actually, the outcome was surprising even us. Our stakeholders were inspired and motivated to participate actively to the workshops, and we could clearly see how they started to form like a shared and mutual understanding of the issues and the problems and the challenges they were facing. We went through our systemic overview of the present state for port arrival and for the port temperature, and asked the participants to add their perspective, correct if there were any misunderstandings, and then highlight the most important challenges in their daily work. In the present state, we wanted to illustrate a story to build an emotional connection and form a mutual understanding of the challenges for different stakeholders. But we also wanted to bring system thinking and systems thinking to the table and map the data flow of the mandatory notifications and the recurring documents, list the different ways of communicating, and then describe the whole process from the viewpoint of each stakeholders for the swim lanes. Then in the vision workshops, we identified and prioritized first the challenges together, and then we worked in small cross-functional teams, creating ideas and solutions and even small early concepts. And our stakeholders became very committed through our work together. They requested even more workshops in the future, and we have continued that work even when we started the development work last autumn, and still continuing. Last week, I think we had actually the latest session with them. And they even initiated this type of a community that they wanted to have to call Friends of NEMO. So we have it nowadays. We built the vision concept around these digitalization themes. So dynamic data governance model, shared situation awareness, personalized data, automation and modernization, flexibility and scalability, and then, first of all, human-centered user experience. And then there were also other key themes that were structuring our conceptual thinking. We wanted to create like shared ecosystem for the stakeholders. And then also the sustainability was playing a very key role with the solutions that were created. And we wanted to also make sure that the NEMO platform in a 10 plus vision will have a possibility to increase different commercial opportunities. And then we quite profoundly renewed the ways of working, the roles and responsibilities for each of the organizations and companies. There wasn't any existing visual guidelines when we started the project. So among the project with the massive service design work, we also had to create a visual brand guidelines together with the guideline, with the client. Our visual lead even described this type of characters for the illustrations based on the stakeholders we had met and the insights we have gathered. So you could actually clearly see some similarities with our stakeholders and the characters that we created. And we even created this NEMO character you can see with the Captain Andre there on the right-hand side. Here you can see the overall schedule of the project, a massive discovery phase in the beginning, and then all the way the solution ideation, then to the vision concepting, creation, and then for the validation phase and workshops. It took around 6 months for us. And I think what was kind of like surprising for our team that we planned like a weekly schedule in the beginning of the project. And we were actually able to stick to that quite precisely until the end of the project. So I think this is also, even before going to the takeaways, I want to address that it's important to kind of like have quite good process for when you're talking about this type of a massive exercise and massive amount of stakeholders also and a lot of complexity. So it gives a lot of clarity for the ways of working when you have planned that beforehand. Of course, you need to have a certain amount of flexibility and cleverness later on, and you need to be able to change the plans if that's needed. But without a good plan, it might be chaotic to go until the end. So this is the vision concept we created. Shaping the future for the next 10 years consists of the concept story, data flow, and then prototypes, and then the blueprint. These deliverables are portraying a maritime traffic data platform, combining public and commercial data in a way that it benefits all stakeholders within the maritime ecosystem. This concept story starts already from the trade agreement, illustrating the different stages of the port visit. And the idea of the concept story was to build kind of like an emotional engagement story to kind of visualize and illustrate the future state of the way of working. Data flow incorporates systems thinking to the concept story, mapping the stakeholder roles and tasks in the story with the data utilization and flow throughout the ecosystem. It was a heavy work, I have to say, a lot of details. The conceptual interactive prototype demonstrates the possible user experience of the future. So it's not really the UI that we are currently having, that we have been working on now for 1 year now when we have been in the development phase. So the idea with this was more to kind of like give the snapshot of the possible user experience flows, not to really go to the details. And then the blueprint is kind of like putting all these things together and summarize them and provide a systemic visual overview of the concept story and the data flow. And I have to say that we have been using this in many of our events and showing the blueprint because we have printed on a fabric. It's a seal fabric because it's of course for the maritime, and it's around 15 meters long and 3 meters high. We actually have it here. I can show it to you quickly. It truly is a big one, and there's actually someone at the office who stated that this must be the costliest curtains of the town or even in the whole country. So as you can see, it's something that usually gives some kind of a wow effect when we come to an event and present that this is how you can also do deliverables for service design. Then about the impact, if Jukka continues.
Yes, thank you. So, like Greg mentioned, this is like a large and complex service design project, and it truly has quite a massive impact, hopefully, for the future and especially for the productivity of the whole nation. The present state, what you can see here, was praised by the professor of maritime transport Ulla Tapaninen from Tallinn University of Technology, and she said that she has not seen anybody in the field of maritime logistics who has so far been able to put together such a holistic overview of port arrivals and departure. So that was quite a lot from her. And we were able to bring together different stakeholders, like Sanna mentioned, from maritime industry, authorities, as well as commercial companies. And we started the change management for this mandatory system already from the beginning. And as a result of the intensive concept creation, we have a very committed stakeholder group working with us throughout the implementation. Last week, we had a webinar with joining more than 70 participants from the NEMO Friends committee. And here's the present state. We clarified the processes for companies, how to register to NEMO. We built the mobile interface for shipping agents, where they receive the notifications of missing data. And also the NEMO provides a clear, systematic way for the EU formalities and port calls. In the future, for instance, one of the applications of NEMO will be a so-called virtual arrival, which is a contemporary procedure for ships to arrive in port utilizing situational awareness. And the benefits are quite great. They can decrease the CO2 emissions by 24% during one trip, and cut the cost of energy cost by 20% for shipping companies. And NEMO enables these solutions on a national scale. Our team has been guest speakers many times in maritime events around the world. And while creating the concept for NEMO, we have also created an export product to sell to other countries where maritime single window becomes mandatory. NEMO will be taken into use in August 25, but the work continues, of course, with the added commercial value solutions. Then a couple of key takeaways for the audience. First of all, for you service designers, like Sanna mentioned, we had a quite big team, but the multidisciplinary team here was the key for the success of the concept creation project. And we used the service design for clarity and visual design for emotional engagement. What you saw in the blueprint and data flow was a systematic approach with the data architecture and to describe the business processes. And of course, with the stakeholders and co-creation for concept creation and change management. Very crucial. For the clients, of course, good to remember to trust the practitioners and give them space for creative thinking, of course. And what you have to remember is that the complex discovery requires plenty of time and resources. There was many stakeholders to observe and interview. So you can imagine that it did require quite a lot of time. And we also used high quality visual outcomes, and that needs also investing. And for this NEMO project, all of this was true. With NEMO, we aim to change the ways of working within the maritime domain. Try to build a revolutionary data platform combining public and commercial data and optimize the processes used within and across organizations. As Finnish trade is heavily dependent on the maritime traffic, our ultimate goal is to boost the productivity of the Finnish nation.
Thank you, Jukka. So last, I would like to give a little bit like a wider context when it comes to the NEMO case, it's a great project example of our design approach, and I would like to share also how we use design and service design in a wider context, and how it creates competitive advantage to our business, especially when it comes to this maritime business area. So like I mentioned, we have here at Siili this Siili Maritime, which is focusing on building the digital and data-enabled solutions in the maritime industry. And our mission is to be a game changer in the industry and make goods movement chain in maritime logistics efficient, visible, and sustainable. And this is definitely not an easy mission to accomplish, and it requires that we need to be thought leaders of the industry. So in practice, how do we manifest our ambitious mission? And in addition to NEMO, we apply the same approach to all of our projects in maritime. So creating world-class concepts with top-notch design skills is core of our business success and capabilities. So let's take a look at what are the core elements of our design approach in domain overall. So in maritime industry, the whole logistic chain and its multiple business processes and organizations are all tightly linked to each other. And for that reason, maritime is an industry which creates genuine business ecosystem. You don't have to create it. It's actually there in every day in the operative ways of working. Each organization and company that are in part of that logistic chain that are enabling the vessels arrive to the ports and then take the goods from there on land to the customers. You need to have multiple organizations in the same value chain. And this requires a lot of facilitated design work and need for collaboration and co-creation. It's a must. Nature of the maritime domain is also very international by nature. This enables scalability of different concept ideas. So when you are able to crack the digital solution in a local level, you can scale it globally. And from design perspective, we need to focus quite a lot to the system design, meaning that maritime is a lot about logistics between different stakeholders. So we need to understand the processes, the data flow, and the international standards in a proper manner, coming from the IMO, International Maritime Organization, so under the United Nations. And through this system design approach, we can create quite impactful international scalable concepts. And last, but definitely not least, I can't address enough. Every time I talk about this case or everything what we do here under the maritime when it comes to the design, it's so important key element in our domain design work that we do proper change leadership. I want to use change leadership work rather than management, because it's a lot about the people. It's a psychological task. It's not just managing the things. It's about impacting of how people are thinking, how they are, what kind of attitudes they have, or what type of a perspective they have. And it's not an easy task, and it requires a lot from our designers and experts in order to make it happen. And just like with NEMO, every interaction with the people involved during the design process opens up a possibility to guide our stakeholders and the customers to think differently, and us also lead the change. We need to take those opportunities for every interaction. And we are in a mission that together with our customers, we actually are changing the business models, ways of working, and even the mindset. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuka. I know this is a very complex problem that you tried the best you could to make it as succinct as possible. We have a ton of questions in the chat that we're going to feed you now. I will start with the first question around data. Obviously, a lot of data. You have all those ships coming in and out, communicating with each other, communicating to authorities, EU regulators, Finnish regulators. How did you handle, you did a really good job at keeping it like human, so to speak, but let's talk about data, right? So how did you somehow build an ecosystem of the data stakeholders? How did you understand the amount of data? Did you have access to all the data? So talk to us a bit more about how did you wrap your mind around this probably stupefying amount of data you had to deal with?
Yeah, I could start with, and if maybe Jukka, you will continue from the technological perspective. When it comes to the data, yes, we did actually have a possibility to have quite good access for our current ways of working and even the systems that our stakeholders were using. So that was benefiting us a lot with the discovery. But when it comes to understanding the data usage, you truly need to understand first the business processes. So that's where you always need to start. So it's not a technological issue when you want to describe the future of the data usage. It's more like a process design issue that you need to tackle. So you need to understand in a very deep level of each company and each organization business targets, the roles, the kind of processes that they are using, and also where they are putting in the data and where they are utilizing the data. And also understanding the different levels of the data. So is it data? Is it more like information? Is it knowledge? So kind of the hierarchy. So this is my kind of like 5 cents for the question. Maybe you could continue from the technological perspective.
Yeah, well, first, before going to the technological perspective, I just want to show you one of the books that was basically a mandatory for our team to read when they was like introduced to this project. So this is a maritime logistics. It's in Finnish, but nevertheless, it basically explains from the beginning what the maritime logistics is and all the concepts and you know vocabularies and so on. And none of the team members that we have had any background on maritime logistics. So you can imagine how the steep learning curve we had, and it was difficult, especially with the what it was this the blueprint on the background you see here was especially difficult to gather the information. Of course we had some EU specifications which contains like spreadsheets more than 1,000 rows, so we had to build a data model for that and what's the relationships of this information to another. So it truly was difficult, and then we had to validate what's our thinking with the stakeholders. Are we correct with this thinking, or do we have to adjust it somehow?
Yes, we had to do a lot of iterations. So multiple iterations with the smaller groups, with the authorities, with the specific companies. So kind of like building first a big picture and then of the current state, how it nowadays work, then shifting with the data enabled and automation and even AI solutions for the future, and then building a new flow, how it could be in the future, and then putting all the details that who needs to provide which type of a data in order to make the flow more efficient coming to the ports and continuing the logistics from there. Yeah. So not an easy task, but the question is more about the business, not about the technology first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So if it's okay, we're going to start asking you some questions going to be around the sheer scale of the project, right? The whole idea is kind of like you have so many stakeholders, so many projects, so many problems to solve. We're going to ask you how you did it, which is the reason why we have you here. So Robin, do you have the first question for Sana and Yuka?
Sure do. And this is from earlier on in the presentation from Aurelia, asking more around when you were surveying earlier on in the presentation. How granular did you get with planning? How much details did you share with the clients?
You mean with the planning when we did the weekly plan?
Early planning, yes. I said surveying, sorry, planning. Yep.
Yeah, no worries. Yes, a very good question. I think we were actually quite granular because we wanted to, at least with our FinTraffic, which was our direct customer, not necessarily with all the stakeholders. So with the stakeholders, we had certain workshops and certain validation rounds that we wanted to kind of put on the schedule so that we made sure that we have those there enough early so that they can kind of plan it for their schedules. But with the customer, we were quite open. We wanted to kind of create that type of a relationship with our customer, that we do this together so that we both are kind of steering in a way the schedule so that we don't get into a conflict then in a later state. And I think that worked quite well. So we were very open with our plans. And if there was a reason to change the plan, then we changed that together because there was a good rationality behind it. So weekly basis schedule we shared with the customer, the client.
Cool. Next question. Brendan, do you have a question for our guest?
Yeah, Lei asks, everything seems so complex, especially the data flow, and then it's coupled with all this beautiful visual work. And Lei is asking, is it possible to share it to read? So you had some links at the end of your deck. What all is there available? So a number of people have asked, is the deck available, this particular deck, to share? And then what other data is it? That last slide, is that where they're going to go to read more on the project?
Yes. Yeah, basically, we are able to share the blueprint. So that's we can provide that.
It's a quite hefty PDF, maybe 50 megabytes or something like that. So.
Yeah, we'll probably try to add some links. One way should just post the YouTube video. Tomorrow, most likely, we have probably some, I'm assuming the easiest way was for us to actually add those links or anything you have, including the book you just shared, by the way, Yuko. So I don't know what the book was.
It's in English, and it's actually written by Ulla Tapanen, and this very specific same professor that was also giving congrats for our work.
So we get all that information from you after, and we just add those into the comments of the YouTube video, so anybody here can actually just access those PDFs and whatever you have to share with us. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sure. Robin, do you have another question?
I was looking up the book to drop the link. Yes, I do have a question. Actually, it's from Brandon. Brandon, if you'd like to ask your question.
Sure. Thanks, Robin. So how did you decide that a mobile app was the right solution? And how early in the discovery were you able to settle on that? Everybody thinks a mobile app is the solution, but very often it's not. But in your case, it was. So...
to be honest, we have both. So we have for different kind of use cases. We have also the desktop version, even though for the prototype we wanted to do the mobile version. The reason for that is that many of our stakeholders, when it comes to the port, for instance, they are having very moving, but like mobile type of a work landscape. So it's very natural for their type of a context when they are moving around at the port and not able to be at the desktop all the time, that we have the mobile first approach with this one. So quite in the early phase, we realized that already in the discovery when we did our observations at the ports, for instance.
Yeah, true. But yeah, that was for the user interface. But we have to remember how crucial the APIs, I mean, the application programming interfaces are, especially in this large-scale ecosystem. A lot of, plentiful, a lot of systems that needs to operate together and exchange information. So not only this mobile app is used by the by the agents or some of the stakeholders, but especially for the ecosystem, we went with API first approach.
Very true.
Yeah.
So interoperability has been definitely one of the challenges that we had to tackle.
So, Sana, I have a quick question around the sheer volume of information you have to deal with in the project management part of business, right? So this is obviously a 10 years project or more. Did you have any pressure in terms of the client, which is the country of Finland, to deliver somehow what we call quick win, where you actually ask, hey, this is a 10-year project. We understand it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Yes. But we also want to be able to show results as soon as possible, right? We always try to be good business partners with our business partners, and we try to provide them some quick wins, something they can really just like start working on, and also some longer leg projects. So how did you manage that?
I have to say, I have to be honest here, because our customer was a dream customer in that sense, that I have been working 20 years with similar type of cases, with the smaller ones, with the bigger ones. And this was in that sense a happy case, because our customer has a long history with very difficult and very large scale development programs. So he already knew when he was kind of dealing with this case and selecting the partner when we were in the tendering phase, that this will require some type of a change management or change leadership type of thing. So of course there were like nuances that we had to kind of convince, and for instance this example that I mentioned, that they were very skeptical that when taking the authorities and the private sector companies under the same roof for the workshops, they were against that for many weeks. But we were able to convince them, and then once they saw the first workshop, then they were on the same board. But to be honest, with many cases, I have had to convince and do many type of jungler tricks and circus type of tricks. But with this case, the customer was on board in that, so they knew that this will be a huge change, and this is a long-term kind of evolution that we are looking for here, that it requires a proper concepting.
So there was promises made around like delivering some things within 6 months and some other things within 8 months. So they are fully aware there could be nothing concrete done in a year.
No, that's okay. And maybe I understood now better. Yes, we have a schedule in that sense that we promise that we will deliver some type of a concept in 6 months. So that was promised. So like I said, we really did the schedule for the 6 months, and we actually obeyed the schedule quite precisely. So of course, in which level and how ambitious the concept would have been, then that was the mystery when we started. Of course, our targets were that we want to kind of bring a very ambitious and very long-term vision, but you never know when you start the discovery that where you are able to end up, and if you are able to have the co-creation working in the level that you would wish and get the engagement. So that was of course a mystery for all of us, and we were able to succeed. But yes, we promised to deliver at least some level of concept in 6 months.
So my second part question to this is like dealing with like the business partners, right? So we usually have a tendency to be very myopic about the happy path, right? In this particular case, what is the best possible experience to actually have ships coming in and out of Finland? I get that. There are thousands of potential breaking points in the experience, right? So many things can go wrong at so many times. Did you from the beginning start talking at least about those potential break-off points of the experience? Was that kind of like an easiness to actually just eventually discuss like this could go bad very quickly if those three things happen, right? Was it kind of like an open communication? It was kind of like, let's focus on the best experience first, and maybe in 5 years we'll talk about those bad things.
Yeah, I think that both. So of course, when we first met with some of our stakeholders, they started to talk about everything and all of their headaches, and then we just needed to guide, like eventually somehow wrap it up into a direction that we were able to kind of keep a little bit focused there. So naturally, we had to kind of make sure that we at least meet the regulative parts so that we understand the issues there first, and then the most kind of a crucial ones when it comes to the business impact. So of course there was a lot of a hassle in the beginning, and I have to say that during my career, maybe the heaviest and the most difficult one to get the to actually to be able to wrap up the insight. So the massive amount of the kind of all the desktop studies that we did, all the interviews, observations, there was so much information that to be able to pull out the essential from there and to kind of make these kind of blueprints and the processes, it took quite a lot of time. But yes, you're right. I think that that we had to guide quite a lot the discussions already, just even during the first interview. So we had to have, when we went to the interviews, that's the thing, that you have to kind of do your homework before you go to the interviews, that if you don't understand the context of the business and you go there just to ask everything, you're not most likely going to get that type of answers that are going to be the most essential ones, because you're not able to guide the discussion in the level, because you're so kind of like green in the field that you're just asking everything and thinking everything is so important. So I think that what was actually a good thing, that we did the homework quite properly even before we started to do even the first interviews.
Jukka, I want to make sure I know you have anything to add to those 2 or 3 last questions.
Yeah, well, maybe one thing you were asking about the about this, what did we promise to release? Maybe related to that, one of the challenges that we have noticed is that, you know, a vision concept like this, you know, for the next 10 years, you put the expectations quite high, right? And then the first release of the actual application or system that you will, you know, release will not, of course, will not be what we promised for the 10 years. So managing that expectation is actually, it is difficult, you know, the high expectations and the things that we actually in reality deliver. That is the challenge that you have to acknowledge. So
a lot of, and not managing also the change, but managing the expectations when the work continues after the concepting phase for the developing.
So do you feel like, my last question, I want to give the floor back, like, do you feel like the scale of the project was very different? Because everything you described here is what we do every day for other smaller projects. Do you feel like what you've done in terms of methodology, tools, expectation was different because it was an entire country, or was this just kind of like business as usual, or just like, no, the scope is larger, but what we do is actually the same thing?
I think many of the kind of approaches you can apply for more incremental and smaller work. But of course, it's good to kind of like have a reality check that where do you have time and in which level you take the discovery, or how much you go to deep dive into the data flows and that type of things. And of course, in Maritime, for instance, here with our business, we have, like I said, we utilize very same type of approach, even for a smaller project, which might be just 2 months of design or that type of thing. So we just scale it a bit more smaller, but we try to keep the similar type of approach so that we always have kind of, for instance, the system thinking, when we always tie that together with the human-centric design, so that we always have the both sides whenever we do a concept work.
Cool. Robin, do you have any questions around more like the design methodology tools that were used by the team?
Yes, we did have, so Brendan had a question here, and I'm going to tag a few other questions into it. One is very directly, how big was the service design team? And I would assume that can include researchers or, you know, specialties tied to the service design side of it. And then want to tag on to that as well. What other disciplines were part of the core team, not necessarily stakeholders, but more of the team, working on this project? So you mentioned lots of data. So questions about data analysts. Did you have specialists in that space? So we'll start with that, and then I have a follow-up.
Yeah. So I guess you guys now sharing the slide of the team. So this was our core team. So altogether 7 people. Of course, larger than maybe for more smaller incremental work. For other maritime projects, we have maybe 3 to 4 people. Sometimes they have like a two people in a mini team. So of course more extensive. And then, like I mentioned, we had like 3 to 4 people support us during the half a year for certain pieces, like for branding and visual guidelines and prototyping and all that. But actually, I have to say that of course we have Heima and Jukka here, and even Vesa is capable for doing development. So we have technical people here involved. But how we work is that we require this multidisciplinary thinking from all of our team members in a certain level. So everybody are experts of their own area, but what we are looking for, what is ideal for our teams, is that everybody have a certain understanding of each expertise, so that you don't only go to a very deep and don't understand in a generic level what the others are doing. So our architects and technical people, they understand the business and service design, and even some parts of the visual design, how it works, at least in a overall level. And then our service designers, they need to understand also the systems thinking. They need to understand a bit of the architecture perspective. So this is how our ideal team is working.
Yeah. So you have to incorporate also the technical people and the data architects, so that whatever you're designing is also feasible, to implement.
Absolutely. Faced that many times. The follow-up question that we'll tag onto that too is how did you select stakeholders that you were involving in your workshops?
That's a good question. So, of course, naturally, we used the knowledge of our Fintraffic, our customer, which had some background knowledge already before we started. So that was the starting point. But then also, when we started with some of our stakeholders, we kind of like learned during the discovery phase that, okay, we don't have any knowledge about this area. And then we discovered that, and we contacted some stakeholders from that area. So we had certain group and certain organizations when we started, but then we extended during the discovery a bit.
Yeah, but in addition to that, with the workshops that we had, we also did a background check of each, participant, and we learned the nature of let's say, how they behave. Do they take a lot of space? Are they more quiet? So Sanna, it was her idea that, so we need to already in advance plan the teams, so that each one gets involved and to say the things that they need to know that are important.
It's true. We kind of pre-facilitated the group so that the kind of the dynamics of the group for each workshops will be the best possible for kind of like nurture the if it was more about getting to the deep of challenges, or if it's more about ideation. So we're trying to find a good balance. Yeah. With the expertise, but even with the personalities of the people when we had been working with them. So I don't know if somebody would see our notes from the Excels of the when we did the group division there.
And you always get the most challenging ones.
Yeah, I was the one who was getting the most sellers. Anna can handle those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a design project within itself, designing a productive workshop.
Yeah.
with the dynamics.
We have a few questions around prime framing. Obviously, you had a really good idea what was expected of you, right? Fixing maritime traffic in Finland, right? So the project was pretty much, bookended, so to speak. But I'm assuming as you started to dig into it, the prime started to kind of like exponentially explode. How, and I think, Robin, you have a specific question from Luca around problem framing, definition before jumping into ideation, right? Robin.
I think Brandon's got that one.
Yeah. So Raluca asked, how many discussions were needed before starting those workshops? Because really, you're trying to find the right problem to solve before you start heading off in a direction, right? And then how did you set that direction and then keep on that North Star? Was it intuition based, or was it something that was given to you by the client? So kind of roll those into one there.
Yeah. I think that the key point was, like I said, the inside work, the thinking work, so that you have all the discovery material that you need to, and also the desktop study, and you have been reading the books, and you need to understand the context of the maritime, you need to understand the issues that the different interviews have stated and what we have learned in the observations. Then you need to do as a team the thinking. So understanding the essence of what is really the beef of the current state and what is really the most critical challenges. So when you go to a workshop like Jukka is showing here, the blueprint of our current state that we went to discuss with our stakeholders based on the discovery that what we have learned about the current state, you need to be kind of a step ahead. You don't go there to ask like, okay, we have interviewed, we have learned this and this and this, but please tell one more time so that we can get the big picture. You need to kind of like make the big picture based on the interviews, based on the observations, provide that in a format that is somehow tangible and understandable for everyone. And then kind of like making sure that you're able to edit it or correct the mistakes there if needed. And we even had already with the team before we went here, even the exercise here was to kind of like state the most important challenges. But we did that beforehand with our team. So we were kind of always a couple of steps before. And when we went to the ideation workshops, we already had done the ideation with our team. So of course we didn't want to be like fake in that sense, that we actually really took the ideas also from the stakeholders, and there were really good concept ideas coming from there. But you're not able to facilitate the workshop if you haven't actually done the thinking before you go to the session. So I think that was the key for us, that you're on top of things before you go to the workshop.
But approximately how many meetings this required?
Wow.
Maybe 20?
No more.
More.
Well, if you count all the observations and interviews, at least, and if you take the internal, I don't know, maybe 100. So internal and external. So interviews, observations, and internal meetings, and some kind of like mini workshops before the big workshop for the current state. I maybe say 80 to 100.
I just want to quickly, we have a few people joining us now. I want to apologize. We actually changed the time to the exceptionally to accommodate our friends from Finland. So if you're joining us now, this will be available. The record available is going to be probably tonight or tomorrow. So apologies for changing the time on you. So if you're joining us now, you're catching the Q&A session, and we're kind of wrapping that up for them. So Brandon, you have maybe one more question, and Robin, one more question for our lovely guests who are trying to go to bed.
I think we captured all of the questions that we had logged. Robin, do you see any that we didn't get?
No, I don't see any missing there. I had one follow-up question maybe to close out on, and it was a point you made answering another question, talking about the time that it took to see the impact of the work, and then managing those expectations in those times until you could get that. And this is actually a topic that's very close to my heart of, can you talk a little bit about what was the scenario? Did you have buy-in from your clients knowing that it was going to take a long time, or were there many conversations about holding the line, keeping the investment, don't give up? We'll see it down the road.
You want to start for it?
Yeah, of course, that question may arise, but like Sanna mentioned, we had a dream customer, especially the main buyer, basically the program owner. But yeah, I mean, we had to manage that particular thing as well, and especially I have noticed that I mean in later phases of the project, that we are in implementation phase now. So I mean, yeah, it is something that, you know, question might arise that, is this worth it? Is this really worth investing? But I have to say that the feedback has been amazing. I mean, I don't think we would have this vivid community without this concept project that we had.
So again, the topic today was about large-scale service design. I'm making the wild assumption that both of you, this was the largest project you worked on in terms of like sheer scale, right? The whole country of Finland. Now that it's over, or at least, you know, implementation phase, what would you have done different?
For the concept phase.
I don't know. It's pretty.
Planning, staffing. Did you have enough people? Did you have enough time? Do you have enough money? I mean, we talked about, you know, for example, the blueprint you did there was like, you know, would you have
maybe
done
because, maybe now thinking back and kind of like as we said, we had a dream customer in many sense, and we also were able to create such a phenomenal kind of like for the work. Maybe we could have utilized that even further, even more, because there was such a kind of like and it still continues. Like I said, Jukka said that last week we had like 70 organizations participating our session, even it was a webinar. So kind of like and it's like almost 2 years when we started the work. So it's kind of like we are very proud of that. So maybe we could have utilized it even more. So when we realized that this is something that, you know, like people are very committed, so and the organizations are committed, so maybe we can utilize that in a commercial level even better, because we of course do that now, but I think that there was a lot of momentum. So that's maybe something that I'm kind of now. So all these value-added services, we could have started to create those already like earlier. So we are doing that now, but you know, we could have been speedy more there in that sense.
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, looking at this now, the technology has advanced quite rapidly, and you have all these kind of generative AI, you know, design tools, such as Midjourney, for instance, which we didn't have at the time we did the concept. But nowadays you can just, you know, create a prompt, and it creates you a visualization. So I don't know, but we didn't have that at that time. So,
but now we use that.
We use it nowadays. We use it nowadays in our concept works
for the illustrations and all that.
Yeah.
So, and not just for the conceptual work, right? So all the illustration you have behind you, as you say, you could do it in Midjourney, which is very like, you know, small and factual. But for example, would you now recommend to actually have an AI foundational level into the app? The data manipulation, would you actually consider kind of like having AI implementation with things that actually feel a bit more like analog a year ago?
Yeah, I would say so for the concept creation, but for the solutions that we created for the concept, for the NEMO concept, the AI is very much included there. But maybe Jukka means now only for the concept creation. So like illustrations, for instance, we could use of the work of design could have been maybe faster if we could have had a little bit help of the AI.
Yeah.
Cool. So now let's talk about like the uncomfortable stuff. Do you wish you had more staff? Do you wish you had more money? Did you wish you had more time, or you feel pretty comfortable what you were able to? Obviously, you won the award, right? So obviously, you did something right. But you know, again, what would you change if you had a magic wand?
Yeah, well, I think we had quite good amount of money and resources. I think maybe the time was quite stretched. So like we really had to. We started in the middle of January and we ended in the middle of June. So I have to say that it was maybe a little bit stressful journey in that sense, that even though we enjoyed that and we had also a lot of fun, but it was quite heavy. So maybe maybe from the peace of mind of perspective, maybe 2 months more would have been more easier.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys, Sam?
Yeah, same response. Yeah, nothing to add.
Well, I'm going to let you go back to your families. I really appreciate your help. I really appreciate that you're staying late for us. It was very interesting. It's very difficult for us to find some very public-facing project or large scale we can share. And you've been wonderful and very candid about your findings. I know you can share a lot more, so we're going to capture that for our audience and kind of like get that into the YouTube links. I know there was a book that you shared. We actually found the book in English. Robin is going to post that, and also you have the blueprint. You have a whole bunch of stuff that you are being very kind to share with us. So we really appreciate it as a community. And thank you for your time. Thank you for staying up late for us. We really appreciate it. Have a lovely evening, and hopefully we'll see you next year at the Redesigned Network Global Conference in Helsinki.
Absolutely. Everybody are mostly welcome here, warmly welcome. And thank you also from our perspective. Very honored to be here and appreciate it to get the invitation and share our story. And like I said, you know, don't hesitate to keep in touch and ask questions. You can find us from the LinkedIn and very, very happy to continue the discussions.
Yeah, likewise. Questions, by the way.
Yes, very, very good ones.
Good. Thank you so much for your help, and we'll provide your LinkedIn links to the people who actually want to ask you more personal questions or professional questions, I should say. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.